enough of your community, thanking enough of the children in your community to come on out to Westwood Elementary School, our neighborhood community school where eagles learn to soar. My name is Hashem Jabbar. I'm the interim director of Racial Justice Now, and I'm going to start this program off properly. My mother is here today, so I would get in trouble if I didn't. So in accord with our ancient cultural traditions, is there anybody here? I'd like to ask permission from the oldest person in the room to start our program. Is there anybody here, can you show by hand? 50 years or over, can you show by hand? 50 years old, anybody? So we are taught in our culture to respect our elders. Anybody over 55? Anybody over 60? Anybody over 65?
Here I am.
Anybody over 70? Anybody over 75? Anybody 80? So we ask for your permission to get us started today. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Hashem Jabbar. I have the fortunate opportunity of sitting in between two beautiful black women, so I'm going to ask them to come on up here and join me. And yes, I'm thankful for that. And we're here today to support the local WeChoose coalition. And to tell you a little bit about the WeChoose coalition, the WeChoose campaign is a declaration from hundreds of thousands of parents and students in cities across the United States with a clear yet profound message. We refute and resist corporate education policies that are inflicted upon our children without our voice. The failure of previous administrations to respect the voices of all Americans has set the tone for this perilous moment that we are now in. We reject appointed school boards. We reject zero-tolerance policies that criminalize our children. We reject mediocre corporate education interventions that are only accepted because of the race of the children served. We choose equity. We choose sanctuary cities for Muslims and all immigrants. We will organize local coalitions and alliances to build the power to realize this vision. So I'm going to allow our national representative from the Journey for Justice Alliance, Ms. Natasha Capers, to introduce herself, and then I'm going to allow, I said aloud, didn't I? I felt those eyeballs. So I'm going to ask permission for them to introduce themselves. Ms. Natasha Capers.
Thank you. Good afternoon or evening. I'm not sure what time it is in the morning. I am Natasha Capers. I'm the National Representative for the Journey for Justice Alliance. We are a national coalition of grassroots organizations that organize in Black and Brown communities, whether that be student organizing, parent organizing, or community organizing around education issues all across all 50 states and even as far, because we've become international in South Africa and Chile. So really taking a deep dive into looking at the educational equity for students of color, not just in Dayton, not just in the United States, but across the world. And I'm from New York City, where I'm the coordinator for the New York City Coalition for Educational Justice, where we organize in Black and Brown immigrant communities around equitable educational outcomes, including culturally responsive education.
Ms. Cameron Walker.
Good evening. I am Cameron Walker, parent organizer with Racial Justice Now. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you. Thank you, community members. Thank you, members of Dayton, Ohio. Thank you, members of Yellow Springs, community members of Yellow Springs and other places from around Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. Thank you to our leadership that sits in our audience today. We really appreciate you taking the time to come out and be a part of this with us. And of course, we will be making some asks later on in the program. But again, we just want to extend a thank you. And as a parent organizer, I really am focused on the whole child, which includes the parent. You cannot have the child without the parent or the caregiver. And so tonight, goal is to really engage the parent body about issues, policies that impact our children on a very local level. I feel like they are our most valuable asset, and we have to protect them and their education and their human rights at all costs. We cannot leave this up to an administration who is completely for profit, who is driven by corporate greed and corporate corruption, and take away the educational equity that our children deserve in order to thrive. If we want to see a stronger America, if we want to see stronger communities, it starts with a strong educational foundation. And so again, I thank you guys for coming out, and I truly hope that when we leave here tonight, that we have a broader glimpse of the threat that this particular administration poses to, again, our most valuable asset.
Thank you, Cameron. We are here at Westwood Elementary School, our local neighborhood community school. I want to recognize and thank our principal, Ms. Sheehy, who's in the back, for opening the building up to us. In the area, she works tirelessly. She is, I think, going into her 4th or 5th year here at Westwood Elementary. I hate to say it, but we're going to tell the whole truth that 4 or 5 years ago, Westwood Elementary was all the way at the bottom of the district in performance. I believe it's 27 schools in the Dayton Public School District, and Westwood was at the bottom. But every year since Ms. Sheehy has been here, the school has been adding value, and increasing their test scores. So I thank Ms. Sheehy and her staff for their tireless work to continue to educate our children and to make sure that they have all that they need to be successful. So thank you, Ms. Sheehy, for opening up the building to us. To ensure that we have a respectful meeting, we're going to make sure that we review our code of conduct. And it simply says that we will treat all individuals with a sense of dignity, respect, and worth, make a personal commitment to be non-judgmental about cultural differences, living conditions, and the lifestyle of each person in this meeting, no judgment, and enter with a positive attitude. We respect each other's process, lane, and gift. We're going to ask that we avoid, and you all avoid, preaching or pressuring anyone to accept your political, cultural, or religious beliefs. This is a safe place to share your experience, and we value your voices. Avoid profane and abusive language and disruptive behavior. Restricted use of photo, audio, or video recording equipment unless authorized. Please put your cell phones on vibrate. And if you have an urgent call, please take it outside of the meeting area. Please avoid sidebar conversations and negative comments. Lack of courtesy and rudeness to any fellow leader is unacceptable. Land the plane, stay on topic, attempt to be brief, reserve your passion, respect for the agenda, and focus on solutions. Lastly, respect all confidential information. All leadership is responsible for maintaining the confidentiality of all proprietary and privileged information to which they are exposed. With that said, everything that says here stays here. So we're going to get right into our documentary. I'm going to hit the lights and we can get that started.
Yeah, you want to tell them about it first?
I'll let you do that.
So we're going to watch a film. It's about 28 minutes long, and it really is to give context for today's conversation around the effects of privatization across the country and the effects of budget cuts, the effects that Devos has had on a number of other folks, and it really is to just kind of give us a place to start from. Like, it's really our point of entry into the rest of this conversation. So thank you.
If we want to watch it, can we watch it online too?
You can, because I can help to share that with you. And I'm sure there'll be some kind of thank you email that goes out to folks that it could be included.
we'll definitely share it on our Facebook page. So, you know, we'll give you guys all the information on how to follow us, access us, and again, we will make sure that this video is available after.
Have a voice in the hearing. Paid protesters are allowed to take.
That was a very clear picture of what the Trump agenda, education agenda is. We do have some of our elected officials here, and we want them to take a specific listen to the community today. And so we would like to hear from the community members as to what are some of your reflective thoughts. Not a thesis per se, but just some of your reflective thoughts about what you heard and saw. Anybody? In the back?
I wasn't here for the whole documentary, so I apologize. But one thing that I noted at the end was the gentleman talking about the school improvements and how they've been improving for 4 years. And I think something similar has happened in Dayton, just in the last 2 years or less. We've had improvements, but the school board and Rhonda Kaur, the superintendent, have been hurting our community by making the teachers almost go to a strike, by not supporting them in their efforts to begin a new year. And I think that's wrong. I think they should have patted teachers on the backs and said, wow, there's been an improvement in scores. You all are doing a good job. Let's rally the troops and keep going. And that's not what's happened. And the school board have not been kind to me personally. I was there last November and I stood up for community members and children alike because that's when they did a reduction in force without preparing the community for that. And they belittled me from the bench. And so there's not much transparency. There's not, I have no respect for the school board or the superintendent currently. And I want justice and I want a good education for my children and all of our children here in Dayton. So those are my concerns.
Thank you. Anybody else like to share their reflections from the documentary that we just watched?
Joel Jones. I just want to first of all say thank you so much for hosting this Racial Justice Now. I've seen a lot of documentaries, but I hadn't seen this. And reflectively thinking about this documentary showed me just what we're up against. And even though we call this a Trump agenda, what I see this is a failure in the public's eye to value public education. And we know that public education is the foundation of sustainable communities, poverty reduction, and things of that nature. The most poignant part was the intentional alienation of democracy. And the audacity to do that publicly. That even if you don't like what I'm saying, that we live in a democracy, that you don't even want to hear what I'm saying. These things like this are happening in Detroit, has a possibility to happen here in Dayton. But collectively as a community, we have to have more people here. We have to put the brakes on this happening in our community. Regardless of we agree with each other, the ability to be heard is a right. I just want to say that.
My name is Irene Way. I'm another public school student. I think the most troubling aspect of that video was to see how the voice of the people was not valued. I think that is just, it was just unbelievable. And to know that money was involved in that process is just totally unbelievable, especially when you're dealing with communities who are already economically, stressed and depressed. And so to see that is just really troubling as a parent. And I think my biggest concern as a parent, and I've tried to get involved in certain ways, I believe if we have a school board, and for those who are trying to get elected to the school board, hopefully that they realize that they have a responsibility to be inclusive, to bring the parents to the table. Because a lot of times you have parents who don't really know how to be involved, and to just dismiss them to say, oh, they don't know, or we're just going to do it anyway. We're going to do this anyway because they don't. We can get this past them because they're not paying attention. Well, a lot of parents are paying attention, and they may not voice it, they may not know how to articulate it, but they know that they're being manipulated. Right. And so let's be honest, let's be real, let's really treat the parents with respect and dignity, and let's provide not an illusion of inclusion, but let's really include the parents so that they can have a true voice and really be valued and really feel like they're part of the process.
Thank you. Anybody else like to share what they saw or heard in the video, the documentary on?
Thanks so much for bringing this to our attention. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks so much for bringing this to our attention. And obviously we've seen so many different opportunities to witness videos that we just saw. And we can see that pretty much each and every day if we're looking for it. One of the things that I've reflected on in this video is something I've been really closely monitoring is the Colin Kaepernick situation, where he's always pushing the envelope of having this conversation. Because without this conversation, we'll just sweep it under the rug. We'll continue to march through the corporate orders, which the Trump agenda is doing. It is pushing the button for everything else and silencing everybody around him who doesn't agree with it. And the importance of the video I really took back with me is the fact that we cannot stop expressing ourselves about displeasures. So many times, even when we go to the polls, we say, well, our vote doesn't count. And as I've gotten older and older, I find out that my vote does count. And sometimes we need to express that to our younger generation, our younger parents who struggle each and every day, working 2 or 3 jobs, and tired, and sometimes just too tired and frustrated to get to the polls. But we need to have this conversation. And the conversation tells us each and every day that there's a dividing line between those who have it and those who don't. And so we need to continue to have this conversation, such as the demonstration that Colin Kaepernick does at the football games, is to just bring attention to the fact that we need to keep talking about this. It's not so much about disrespecting the flag, which corporate agenda has, just like they did with the group that drove to D.C. and weren't allowed to get in and lobby some of the people, try to sway their minds and bring things to their attention. But the important thing is we need to continue to have this conversation. And, I feel being that now I'm part of the DPS system, I express myself quite often to some of the athletes I'm around, because I want them to be independent thinkers. I want them to learn how to think on their own and put me in force-fed information. Because that's the reason why you go to school, is learn how to think. So the importance that I take back from this is that we need to continue to have conversations about this, not just in pockets like this. Go with your neighbors next door, with cross community lines, and just talk about this conversation about how important it is that we see the disparity in education, healthcare, voting rights, because again, we're gerrymandering, we're trying to break the walls down to that. So, it's important for me to continue to have the conversation. And likewise, everybody in this room needs to continue to have the conversation.
a grandmother, a great-grandmother. And what I'm seeing, I've never seen in my life before, what's happening right now. And I'm not going to sit still and let it happen without my voice being heard. I've been an advocate for my handicapped daughter for 3 years now. And I'm telling you, this is not something you can let up on. You got to keep going. We go see congressmen all the time. Mike Turner will not see us. We talk to his staff, and we keep going back because I'm not shutting up. And so if you want to change something, you got to do more than just a rally here and there. You got to speak up to your congresspeople, and you got to vote and let them know where you are. Because otherwise, we're all going to get run over. I'm telling you, I can see it coming. We're all going to get run over. So that's all I've got to say.
One thing we have to realize here, I am a sitting school board member in Fairfield. And this is the end of my my first 4 years, and hopefully I'll get reelected. But it's been a real eye-opening experience to me as to all of the issues going on. And most of the control of what happens in your local schools rests in Columbus. And that's where, with all due respect to Representative Strayhorn, that's where most of the evil is happening right now. But there's a strong movement nationwide to privatize education. And with that privatization comes profits over the kids. So, in addition to pestering your congressman, you need to get in touch with your local representatives, your local senators, and your state board of education members, in addition to staying in touch with your local school districts. So there's loads of things you have to pay attention to, unfortunately.
So we're going to move on with our program. We thank our community members. We're going to have a question and answer session here after we chat with the panel. If you want to get us started, we're going to each share a few of our thoughts and lift up some stats. Maybe you won't get us started, but I can get us started to address our local concerns. Dayton, Ohio in 1998, according to a reliable source, was number 1 in charter school proliferation. That's 1998. Dayton, Ohio, number 1 in the amount of charter schools in the local area. After Katrina hit New Orleans, Dayton became number 2. And so that tells you, based on population, how many charter schools there are here per capita. New Orleans currently has 100% almost charter schools. So when you have a charter school, that means you do not have an elected official that is responsible or beholden to the taxpayer, to the citizens, to those that voted them in. So if the parent has a concern with the teacher does not meet that parent's concern, the parent can then go to the principal, and after the parent goes to the principal, then that is where the line is drawn. There's no place for an elected official to come in and speak on behalf of the constituent. Simply, you can just get out, is what you can do. So that's a glimpse of charter schools, and as parent organizers, we run into that situation where local charter schools, quite frankly, cherry pick students. They'll take the best of the students in the area. They'll allow them to come to this school for a period of time. And if you don't meet the standards, or if they don't like the way you look or dress or something of that nature, then they can just say, you know what, this isn't a good match. Thanks for coming. And you have no one to go to redress your issues. Dayton Public Schools is 70% more black. It is 100% free lunch, meaning that the students all qualified, so many of them qualified, they gave it to everybody. Again, the way that school funding has been used as a formula in Ohio has been ruled unconstitutional 4 times. So a city like Dayton is disproportionately affected by the funding method in the state of Ohio, which is largely based off of property taxes. Approximately 1 out of 3 charter schools in the state of Ohio fail, but that does not mean that a teacher is at fault. That means that a business person goes home with the taxpayers' money. 1/3 of the population in Dayton, which is approximately 50,000 people, live below the poverty line. So we serve a low-income population here locally. Does that mean that they are less than? Does that mean that they can't learn? Does that mean that they are not smart? Or does that mean that they need a significant investment into them? But let's keep it all the way 100, as they say in hip-hop music. Let's not tell part of the truth, let's tell the whole truth. As a black man, I know that I was not allowed to read for 400 years. It was against the law, meaning my grandfather would be punished by the bullwhip if he or she were caught reading. So we get a picture of the historical context of education in America. We have to always put into context that children help to build a future for the city, for the county, for the state. We know that America is behind in engineers, scientists, and high-level sciences. They say that the Russians are hacking our computers, that the Chinese are hacking our computers. Well, we are not producing the mathematicians to compete. And is that because school is equitable? I think the movie, what was the movie recently with the NASA scientists, the black females that participated? Hidden Figures. So that pointed that out very well. How long did it tell them to tell that truth about Hidden Figures? How many years ago was that black women helped to put a man on the moon to compete with Russia? And so I think I've made all my points. We're going to allow Sister Natasha to tune in.
So I'm going to throw some numbers. Because when we talk about the threat of Devos and Trump in this context, part of that threat is the budget. And what does that look like? And what effects does that have? Like, we've already heard that right here, that it's already unconstitutional how school funding is allocated. But let's even look at what the money coming down from the federal level, how that will affect folks, right? So you think about, let's just take Title I and Title II. Doesn't everyone know what Title I and Title II cover? So Title I covers things like parent engagement, curriculum, before and after school services. Title II covers things like professional development for teachers. There's going to be a cut to Title I. This budget is approved of nearly $1,030,000. How much is our budget now?
That's a good question. Dr. Walker just left. I'm not out.
I didn't mean to mention it.
I want to say 400 million. I could be incorrect. But
so you take that and now you cut it. You think about the things that students already go without and you cut it. You think about all the time schools and parents and students are told to do more with less, and then you give them even less to do even more. Right? So get those test scores up. We want to see them 3s and 4s, but here's only $2. Have fun with that. The cut to Title II, which supports teachers to be able to do their craft well. To do their craft well, who are in the classroom with students, 100 and somehow whatever days out of the school year will be cut over $1,110,000. So you think about all of the opportunities for professional development, whether that's to do culturally responsive education, which Racial Justice Now won, and now is putting together the professional development part. So then you think about, well, where's that money coming from? You think about the professional development that helps to support special needs students, the professional development that helps to support whether new curriculum comes down the pipe or new standards comes down the pipeline from the state. You think about all of the professional development that helps to support new teachers. You think about all of the professional development that helps to support teachers who are supporting students who come with learning English as a second language, and that's cut. So we tend to think about professional development as this flossy, cute thing that adults do. But ultimately, if our teachers are not lifelong learners, then our students don't get the full fruit and benefit of their educational experience. They don't have teachers who are up to their craft. Would you go to a doctor who did not understand the newest technology to treat you? Would you go to a doctor who did not understand the newest medication to treat whatever ailment you have? You wouldn't, because he would be out of his craft. He will be out of his element, and that is not a service to you. Having teachers out of their craft and out of their element is not a service to them, and is not a service to our students. So when we think about the budget cuts that come down, we have to think about what is the ultimate price. What is the ultimate price? Because I hate to say this, but teachers, y'all be all right. Y'all grown. Y'all have been to college. Y'all, if y'all wanted to, you can find another job. With that third grader, what happens? What happens to them? So every single time we think about these budget cuts, they often sound like these big numbers that don't have immediate impact. But when you think about the immediate impact of loss of family engagement, so we constantly hear black and brown parents don't care, yet we put busloads of people to Washington to be ostracized by their own government. Right? Those are the effects that these types of budget cuts have. And the effects trickle down to our children, so that when we think about what happens in the next 10 years to that 13-year-old, what happens in the next 20 years for that kindergartner, that we don't have a sustainable future to lean on. We won't. So we have to be doing all of the work that it takes, locally and nationally, to fight back on those budget cuts, because those are going to have significant effects on how our students are able to learn and what they're able to learn.
Thank you, Natasha. Cameron?
So the first thing that comes to mind to me, the first thing that comes to mind for me, there's levels to this.
That's
so there's levels to this, and I've been in a unique position just over my personal journey to interact with families that are mostly in impoverished communities as a service provider. I've had a unique opportunity to interact with our students in the classroom as a reserve teacher. And then I've had the most energizing experience in the last, since March, so where we were headed into 6 months as a parent organizer for Racial Justice Now. But even in all of those different positions, it wasn't until now when I'm actually able to get a bigger view of what our children are really facing. What's strategically being placed and barriers that are being created for our children and our parents. I hear both sides of the argument. Well, the teachers aren't doing enough. Well, the parents aren't doing enough. But I think we really need to understand that when we have intentional sabotage of a parent's voice to be heard, of a community's voice to be heard, of an actual democracy being practiced, when we hear that, I think it's time that we really do need to come together, both parents and teachers and community leaders, and have a real dialogue and a real conversation. Take off the gloves. Because I know being in that classroom, how stressful it is, having all that 25 second graders, and they all have different things that they are bringing to, different elements they are bringing to the classroom. But I also know that some of those elements they are bringing to the classroom are lack of food, homelessness, mental health issues, medical issues. Maybe they're not living with the parent because their parents are incarcerated. We have to really start humanizing our children. And as an extension of that, we humanize the parent. And if we can't bring those two elements together, Trump and Devos are going to get what they want. Because the people without education are people without power. And if we continue to allow the privatization, not just of public education, but of the prison system, because it works hand in hand. It's the school to prison pipeline. I think that was an accident, but I think it kind of fits there. So what we're doing is we're ushering in a new generation of slave labor. When we allow this type of privatization to happen, being in the classroom where you see children and students are not being challenged to critically think. I mean, I always, when I'm in front of people, I have to reflect as a parent, having a 13-year-old who's come through Dayton Public Schools since first grade, was able to be in a gifted program and able to go to one of the best schools in the district. But that actually doesn't remove the barriers that are there for her. Because there are microaggressions that are happening, things that people won't ever call out. Things that people won't ever see. And so if I'm looking at it from this lens, I can only imagine a parent who struggled in DPS or Fairborn or Greene County or Xenia Public Schools, a parent who struggled as a teenager who may have dropped out, and now you're asking me to be responsible and to know enough to come to my teachers, the Board of Education, and speak up on behalf of my student. I don't know enough. Because I was disconnected from the process. I was pushed out of school. I was suspended. I was exposed. I was pushed through the juvenile detention center system. So when we look at those different elements, we have to really see that they're actually doing their jobs. But the question is, are we doing ours? Are we showing up as a community? Are we showing up engaged and invested? When we want to see better communities, we want to live in communities where we can walk and we can take bike rides and we can have our kids with us and we can go to the local community grocery store and have fresh produce available, have quality food available. But when a community are missing these resources, and again, it's strategically designed by people like Devos and Trump, and then we have local leaders that if we do not hold them accountable, then of course our communities can't get better. Our communities can't heal. Our communities can't provide jobs, bring jobs, give jobs. Yeah. And that's the whole goal of education, is provide an opportunity for our children. Not just to get a job, but to be the next hidden figure. To be the next scientist, to be the next person to discover a cure for cancer that I've suffered from. To be the next liberal arts leader, someone who has a voice, a creative voice that can bring all of this change together. We miss that if we don't push back. If we become so complacent, they are depending. This is their golden ticket for us to be so disconnected as a community that they can get away with what they're doing. Because we're not talking to one another. We're not having conversations with one another. It's about me, mine, and I'm okay. My family is okay. I'm not quite sure about yours, and I don't really care. That's what they're banking on, corporate takeover. When we don't care, they don't care.
Thank you, Cameron. So when again, we thank our community for coming out. We thank our elected officials for coming out to listen to our community. We're going to ask our elected officials to continue to listen as we get into a question and answer session. If any of you have questions that you would like to ask any of the panelists, please do so at this time. Again, we're thanking our city commissioners there in the back. We're coming your way in a minute. We thank our state rep. We're coming your way in a minute. We're thanking our state school board rep as well. Dr. Walker had to come out. He's a popular man. He had to step out. So any questions that we can answer at this time? Anything that you've heard? Josh.
apologize. Long teaching day. Where's the website and the Facebook page? I didn't want to leave here without that information. Thank you.
So you can find, for the WeChoose campaign, you can go to www.J4JAlliance.com, the number 4, I'm sorry, J4JAlliance.com, and this is going to actually spell out, and you all have the sheets with you, but this spells out exactly what the WeChoose, the 7 pillars of the WeChoose campaign. As far as Racial Justice Now is concerned, we're really looking at sustainable community schools like Westwood and the Soaring Eagles, so that we can make sure that there are wraparound services available for our students. And we are looking for a moratorium on the expansion of charter schools. And we want to definitely say the expansion and emphasize that, because we recognize that there are some good charter schools out there. But we also understand that out of 1 in every third charter school fails in Ohio. So you can get more information about the WeChoose campaign, www.J4JAlliance.com, but you can also find more info on us, www.rjnohio.com. .org, I'm sorry, we're not a .com, we're .org. So that's again, www.rjnohio.org. We're also on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, Racial Justice Now, we're there.
My name is Claire Alawalia, and I taught in the Cincinnati Public Schools for 30 years, and for 10 years after that, I substituted in the Cincinnati Public Schools. So I know what you're talking about. At the time I was teaching, the charter schools just were beginning. Now what I want to know is, to whom are they accountable? Do they have qualified teachers? Do they have teachers who are licensed? Or do they just put anybody in the classroom because they get money for every child that they list as part of their school, even if they do not attend the school and take more days absent than they attend?
Thank you for your service of 40 plus years. My grandparents, both of my grandparents are retired teachers from Dayton Public Schools. My mother's a 35 plus year teacher like yourself. I don't have all of the answers to all of those specific questions. What I will address though in regards to charter schools is that there is a different standard than they have for the public schools. It's not across the board, and I will like to lift up that there are no unions in charter schools. There is not collective bargaining in charter schools. So teachers are paid significantly less and therefore find their way out of the industry and into other states or industries outside of education. How much do they get paid? I can't address that specifically. How much do they have to do with professional development? I think I would leave that to maybe my state school board member to address that here in a little bit. But those are very demanding questions that we need answers as community. We need to have that understanding as a community, and we need a educated constituency to know the facts about our school system. So I thank you for those, and like I said, I hope that our elected officials and maybe our state school board member can elaborate when we get to that section.
And I just want to add, I think that's what we're trying to uncover. The charter school is such a mystery.
Right.
And how they do business is a mystery. It is not an elected board. They can have an appointed board. So again, they're taking away your voice. So there's no accountability there. If I don't have a say-so in who sits on that school board for that charter school, then you're taking away my voice and there's no accountability. And if there's no accountability at that foundational level, then how can there be accountability for what happens in the classroom? We can refer back to the video where every question that was asked of her in terms of how students are treated, how students, if a student with a disability or a student from a different background, and she had no answer. She didn't choose to answer because there is no answer, because there's no accountability. There's no one who's actually going to go through and audit and check and do the checks and balances, because it's almost a bubble. So again, it benefits the charter schools to stay as mysterious as possible, so that we can give the parents the illusion of school choice. So we can name it some fancy name, the Engineering Business School of Law. Of course I want to send my child to the Engineering Business School of Law, right? But then when our kids get there, what are they actually learning, and how long are they sustained in that actual school, and who's going to hold the school accountable for pushing my child out if, again, as Brother Hashem said, they don't meet a certain requirement. So there's no accountability for the board, then I doubt there's very little accountability within how the school is managed.
Anybody else have any questions and answers before we move on to our next session? Mary Sue in the back.
Since we know that the federal government is pushing everything down to the states, is there any legislation currently in the House or in the Senate that we should be getting behind that would demand more transparency regarding charter schools, or anything regarding financing that we need to know about and advocate for?
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you. So there are a couple things that are actually going on Ohio state level, and again, so glad we got Representative Strayhorn in the House, and also Ms. McGuire, Mrs. Charlotte McGuire, who's a member of the State Board of Education in our presence tonight, who can help again give a little bit more clarity. But just from our perspective, I know that we helped work on the amendment of House Bill 410, which addresses truancy laws. And so, you know, we're really trying to make sure that our students are not being pushed out of school, expelled, suspended, sent into the juvenile justice system through truancy. Because again, it goes back to family. It goes back to the dynamics in the household. So if a child's parent does not have transportation, and let's just be realistic here, Dayton public schools are not set up as neighborhood community schools. So you have to be bused. You have the option to be bused up to 30 minutes away from your home area, 45 minutes, an hour. It may take that long in this particular area because there's no constraint on where a child can go to school in the district. So that being said, if that child can't get to school because it's not in walking distance, they have a sick parent, they have other siblings in the household, so they have to miss a significant amount of school. House Bill 410 deals with that truancy law that immediately criminalizes that family and that student because of economic or social barriers that they have no control over. Senator Peggy Lehner is working on banning pre-K through third suspensions and expulsions. Now in Ohio, African American students, specifically boys, actually are pushed out through suspensions and expulsions at a significantly higher rate. And I believe just in the last couple years, there was there's 100% push out. So 100% of the students who were being suspended and expelled were African American students. And so what we're looking at is a ban, because you disconnect the student, especially at those foundational age, you disconnect the student from the educational process so early on. It will be hard for that student to catch up. It will be hard for that student to be able to succeed. And it does, again, go right into the juvenile system, because if a child is disengaged at that point, it's hard to bring them back in. So we know that is taking place. Also, some work that Racial Justice Now is doing on the ground, but actually more at a state level and a national level. We are actually working very active for ESSA. So ESSA is the Every Student Succeed Act. And sometimes we have to throw that extra tagline in there. It's Obama's version, President Obama's version of the No Child Left Behind Act. And what ESSA says that the community, the parents, the students have to have a meaningful engagement with decision makers and lawmakers on what is in that state plan. The state plan determines how the policies that are rolled out in our particular districts, including funding. And so this is one of the initiatives that we're working on right now. We were actually at a state board meeting back in July, the beginning of July, to make recommendations. And right now, we had some great champions who had our back, but we still need we have recommendations that have yet to be met, and that is really specifically around school climate. If we're not measuring how a student is, how the school climate is, the discipline, and how discipline is being, how frequent and how it's being used, then there's no way that we can improve it, correct? So these are some of the things that we're actually asking for the governor to review at this point, and take those recommendations seriously and incorporate those into ESSA. However, we'll continue to work so that we can make sure that there is enough public commentary. I think Representative Strayhorn shared with us that there just wasn't a lot of public commentary. And this is what we need to drive our ESSA state plan. We want to shape the education that our students are involved in. We have to be involved. So again, we'll continue that campaign, and we'll continue to make sure that you guys are aware of this opportunity, because it is an opportunity for us to create the type of education that our students receive.
We're going to hear again from our National Representative of the Journey for Justice Alliance, Natasha Capers.
So I just want to give a little bit more context to what you saw. One, that Devos hearing was supposed to happen days before. And literally the day before, I believe, that original hearing, as parents were in Detroit about to hours before they were about to take off on those buses, the hearing was halted and postponed. Just as people were getting on, about to get on buses, right? So, one, it just shows you the determination to then regroup and get folks right back into order, so that way we fill those same buses and get back up to Washington, right? But I also want to give you some context about some of the folks in that film and some of the work they've done. And G2 talked about it. We heard 2 seconds of him talk about a hunger strike. So in Chicago, led by COCO, which is an organization there, in G2, Brown, they staged a 34-day hunger strike. No food at all, 34 days. Him and I think it was 10? Is it 10 folks? And if I got that number wrong, forgive it, frame it off my head and not of my heart. And they went without food for 34 days to make it known, because they were experiencing a school closing. And their school was supposed to close, and what was supposed to happen is that they were supposed to get a sustainable community school, and that was steeped in technology and STEM. And what happened is they were like, we're not going to open that school. Their city said no. And so they staged that hunger strike for 34 days. They ultimately won that battle, but it took Black and brown families starving themselves. Starving themselves. One woman still suffers from heart damage, from starving herself. There have been mass arrests across the country, including myself in Albany. We've put thousands, if not tens of thousands, of folks, if not hundreds of thousands of folks in the streets across the country to fight for public education. In New York City, we walked with 20 folks for the Campaign for Fiscal Equity, which says that New York State owes my city, New York City, almost $2 billion to Black and brown students that they refused to pay out for over 10 years. We walked to Albany. That is 150 miles over 10 days. 150 miles. Imagine packing up, kissing your children goodbye, and saying, I'm walking to my state capital. I did that. I walked 10 days, suffered damage to my foot. Folks were injured and couldn't walk anymore. That's the folks that are in this fight. Those are the folks that they claim don't care. Those are the folks that they leave out of rooms, and those are the folks that they shut out of conversations. Are the folks who are willing to starve themselves into heart damage, to walk themselves into injury, to get arrested, just so that children can sit in a classroom that is safe, that cares for them, and will educate them. That's where we are as a country, right? And so that's just one glimpse of the fight that we are up against. And so when we talk about school takeover, we have to remember that this is about race and about space. This is about race and about space. Across the country, when charters move into schools, they start in Black and brown communities. And they take over. And then you end up with situations where there are entire districts that are tipping the scales towards charter and away from public education, away from a public sector, right? But even in a place like New York City, space is a commodity. Let's be real. Space is a commodity. They close down our schools so that it opens up space for charter. It is a commodity. It is about race and it is about space. And we cannot forget that at any point. And so it's really important for us to always be working as a collective. And I think you spoke about this really well. Like, how do we work together across all of the intersections? How do we work across all of the lines? How do we have a common speech and a common frame? And that is what the WeChoose campaign is centered on. It's centered on, you know what, this is the thing we're fighting against. And here are the things that we know work, and these are the things that we know we want. And we are standing united across the country to fight for that, to fight for sustainable community schools, to fight for that end of push-out, to fight for the attack, to stop the attack on Black teachers. How many Black teachers are in your schools right now? How many teachers of color? How many teachers that look like the students that we teach? That is an issue. If our schools don't reflect who we teach, what are we teaching? Who are we teaching them to be? Who are we teaching them that they can be, if they can't be their own teachers? My son is 10. He's had one male Black teacher his entire educational career. One. Think about the influence of Black males, if you're a Black person, Black males in your life. If you're a white person, think about the effect of white, like being able to walk into your classroom and see a teacher who looked like you, understood some of the things that you were going through, and understood your struggle, and it could talk to who you were, and who you looked up to who you could become. The fact of the matter is that 60% of the teacher population is white. In New York City, 60% of the teacher population is white, 80% of the student population is Black and brown. There's a disconnect. We have to stop the attack on Black teachers, right? And we also have to understand that when we connect these national fights to the local issues, we all win. We all win. When we think about, well, what's happening at the national level connects to the state legislation, that connects to what's happening at the city, what's happening at the school boards, so that we're all talking up and down that ladder in the same way, pushing for the same things, so that they know there's no disconnect. This is not a perforated piece of paper. I can't rip apart. I can't rip this movement apart by giving you what you want and disconnecting from them. Because that should never be what we do. If we are not working together as a collective understanding that when we fight for Black and brown children, that we are literally fighting for every single other child, that it is not disconnected, that it's interconnected. You know, people love that saying, all boats rise, or something like that, right? Like, this is the way in which we get to rise off the boats. And so we have to be really connected and really understand what is at stake and what ultimately, who will suffer the most. So we hear all of those cuts, and yet we heard J4 talk about there was a kindergarten class in Detroit with 50 students, which is disgusting, right? What's even more disgusting is that then he followed that sentence up with saying there were special needs children getting services under the steps. Under steps. Picture your child going over there and trying to meet their occupational therapy needs. I dare you. Go over there and try to deliver speech therapy under the steps. That is a disgrace upon all of us. Upon all of us. That is not okay. That is never okay. Special needs students have been driven out of their own spaces, out of their own schools, and told that they can make do. Just as we've been told we can do more with less, special needs students are being told that they can do miracles with nothing. Nothing. And that is the ultimate disgusting part about this budget. Is that when we think about who gets affected, really those who would get affected the most are those who need the most. And so I'm going to turn it back over because I spoke a little bit about some of the national demands, and you have all of them. But a lot of some of these demands also connect into what the local demands are, because they don't live outside of each other.
So again, as we said, we are asking our elected officials, particularly our city commission, for a moratorium on charter schools. We are in the midst of a city commissioner race here in November. We thank Mr. Joey Williams in the back for attending, along with Mr. Commissioner Jeffrey Mims. We greatly appreciate that, and we do appreciate Mr. Fred Strayhorn for his commitment up front to say that he supports the WeChoose national platform. So let's give Mr. Fred Strayhorn applause. And Mr. Payne, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so now he has some work to do to take it back to the State House, to take it back to his party members and the others, to get them to sign on as well. Again, we are asking for a moratorium on charter schools. We have enough. Let's cap it. Let's look at, let's put a cap on it, and let's go back and look at some accountability. So we've had enough. And then additionally, we're talking about the creation of 10,000 sustainable community schools, keyword being sustainable. Here we are at Westwood Elementary. Again, it is supposed to have wraparound services. I think at most what we're really doing right now is an extended day, and we're thankful for that, for some of our teachers to get Title I funding, I believe it is. That might not be extended if this budget is passed, but we need more wraparound funding. Westwood Elementary School is a STEM school, but that does not mean that it's a STEM school in action. It means it's a STEM school in word. STEM meaning science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. There is no STEM coordinator here. That STEM coordinator would be responsible for training other teachers and how to implement math and science into their daily curriculum. Ms. Sheehy has done an excellent job of investing the STEM dollars that they do have. There is a 3D printing machine here. There is a computer lab here, but we do need the teachers to be able to be trained on these items so that this can be a reality for young people. Again, just because because we might have less money, that does not mean that we do not produce engineers, scientists, architects, doctors, lawyers, and any other high-level academic position. So at this time, we're going to hear from our elected officials. We didn't come for a soliloquy. We came for a yes or no. Are you going to support the WeChoose campaign? Yes or no? If yes, why? If no, why? And we can start with Mr. Fred Strayhorn because his should be quick, fast, and easy.
You already know this.
I think there's some subtle cues there.
You already have one of these, but we'll,
and you can't call me Fred, that's fine. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you, Sue, and Cameron, and Natasha for, can you guys hear me okay on this? For convening this group. I will say, I've looked at a lot of the platform. A number of those things are stuff that the Democratic House Caucus and Democratic Senate Caucus already do and fight for. I think the very first bill I ever did in the legislature was a moratorium on charter schools. As you guys have eloquently articulated, oftentimes, most of the times, they don't show better performance than the traditional schools. There is one thing in the state constitution that we're clearly responsible for, we're explicitly responsible for, and it's funding education and getting those things right. And we've not done that. We've not done that in the 20 years that I've been on staff or as a member. And so all of those things we will continue to fight for, and they match up really well with the stuff that you have with regard to education in Ohio, and I'm happy to support what you said. I will try to do two real quick things and then get off. One, I don't want to speak for the state commissioners, but they do not have the jurisdiction to create a moratorium on charter schools. I just want to let them off the hook tonight on that. That is the state that has to do that. And that is the thing that we have to continue to fight for. I think two ladies asked questions about are there bills that you should look at supporting. We did several things last session around charter school reform, but we really were just scratching the surface. We need to do more with that. We created a bill that took the community learning center model that's really active in Cincinnati, try to make ODE, the Department of Education, use that as a model and push that out to all school districts. They kind of hijacked that and added some more punitive things to help take over the Youngstown school system, which you guys have talked about, so I want to highlight that. Dayton is in the crosshairs of that. Youngstown is going on now, Lorraine is next, and if we don't show improvement over a period of time, Dayton will be captured in that. There's some small things that are happening that you might want to get behind, but mostly it's stuff going on that you want to fight against. And so too many to talk about tonight, but you can use us to kind of coordinate, talking about what are the pros and cons. One of the bills tries to highlight that charter schools should be accountable for the tax dollars they get, not be able to hide behind this veil of their private entity, so they don't have to open our books to us. The other one is about that they should have to do a better job accounting for their kids on a monthly basis, because they've had some problems in terms of enrollment. And I think you asked, are they as accountable as the regular schools? And they're not. From the inception, they've had a different set of rules to play by, and it's been implemented in a way that was never intended to be implemented. And we're missing the boat. It was originally supposed to be, let's figure out what works for kids and use that in every classroom. And it really just became about money. So we have to get at that. I think the party thing I want to leave you with is, because we've talked last week about some things. I know a bunch of people in this room, and most of you already know anything I would tell you in detail. But in my first 8 years in the House, one of the things that happened a lot that's missing today is when I looked out the window, on an awful lot of days, people were showing up in numbers, standing on the lawn of the State House, telling us what they did not like, and protesting and complaining. And seeing that over and over and over got attention from the general public to go, hey, maybe things aren't going as well there as we thought they would. That's not happening the way that it used to. What I wanted to leave you with is, I encourage every group that doesn't like what's going on is to get together with the other groups and other communities that share your feelings and show up on the lawn of the State House and let the legislature hear from you what you don't like about what's going on. Throw a chair. Not literally, proverbially, because the state troopers will come out and arrest you. But show up and proverbially throw a chair, raise your voice, let everybody see you in mass say, this isn't right and this is okay. Joel, the intentional alienation of democracy, that happens because they don't believe that you'll do anything about it. That kind of lame answer repeated over and over, that's canned because she does not have the intellect to go off script and debate or talk about something that she probably doesn't know very much about, is because they don't think that you'll do anything. And if you've been looking at what's going on in Columbus, nobody's showing up. People aren't showing up like they used to. You got to show up. If somebody looks behind me, no matter what I say, no matter what I put in the legislation, if somebody looks behind me, they don't see you, they don't think they have to listen to me. And they don't think they have to listen to my colleagues. And so this only works if you show up, if you're engaged, and you throw that chair, and you make us do what we're your employees. We're not anointed. We're not royalty. I work for you. That's why when he calls me, I come over, or we sit down, we talk, right? I can't be afraid of my kids. You're my boss. Don't let them get away with that in Columbus, that they don't feel like they have to be accountable to anybody. But the only way they know that is if you show up and you throw that chair. So just want to say, support what you're doing, love what you're doing. It's stuff that we already do, but we can always get better. And our collective voices will make all those votes rise in a rising tide. So, thank you.
We want to hear from our state school board member, Charlotte McGuire.
Good evening. Good evening. As I sat here and listened, I was stirred in my heart about what I saw and what I'm hearing. I'm one that was born before Brown versus Supreme Court. I was raised in segregated Jim Crow South Memphis, Tennessee. I was there when King was killed downtown waiting for his appearance at a rally. When rioting broke out, my senior class trip got canceled because rioting happened simultaneously in Washington, D.C., because that's where we were headed. The question, of course, is race, space, but I like to take it to another level. It's the case for education. I've only been on the board since January of this year, filling an unexpired term. The question is, how did we get here? And I'm talking about over 6 decades of various parties, various legislation. And when I got involved, the first thing that came to my heart is, because I have a business degree with a background in accounting, was follow the money, do forensic accounting. And what I discovered, it's really not about public versus private. It's been about how we've been spending taxpayers' dollars and who's making those decisions. As a matter of fact, when I got on the state school board, I was thrust into a forum where I had no orientation. All I could go on was my experience in municipal government, my experience as a nonprofit executive, as my experience in juvenile justice reform. And what I discovered is education is so political. And so my question was always, what about the children? I was beginning to sound like Polly Parrott at the state school board meetings, only to discover I'm talking about people in power and positions at Charlotte. It's really not about the children. And the question that I really discovered was, I went there to make a difference because I have a call to public service, only to discover the legislature. If we have charter schools, it's because it's in the Ohio Revised Code. So our elected officials, not you, our elected officials across this country are responsible because we have educational charter schools. The state school board in Ohio responsibility is to write the administrative rules to implement what the legislators have placed in law. So I go there with the idea of, I'm gonna make a difference, only to discover in my second meeting, I'm asking questions about ESSA. Only to shorten my learning curve and really say, well, what does this do for children? Well, what's the purpose of this? Why are we spending this money? Only to get a text in the second board meeting from the governor's office. And the text said, Charlotte, do we need to talk? We understand you're questioning the governor's judgment on ESSA. I said, duh, I don't even know what the governor's judgment is. Because I'm there to represent children. I went there with the ideal I'm representing the people of the 3rd district. And so what does that mean for us? That means, just as Representative Strayhorn said, you need to show up so you can count up. That means count up the votes. And one of the things, this film was moving, but one of the things Betsy Devos delivered to us was when she said, and I think you picked up on it, State School Board Rep from Fairborn, she says, at the state level. I believe in local ID. What does that mean? Local design and determination. Local design, local innovation. In other words, decisions concerning our children should be made close to where they live. Because who should know them best? We should. So the further away you get that decision making, guess what? The less impact the people will have. And so I believe every child, and I think there was a special ed teacher, she had to leave. Every child has the inherent potential to succeed. We have to tap into that potential, which means we have to equip our teachers with the resources and the practices that, I don't want to get on my soapbox.
You already got on. I want to know your position on the WeChoose campaign.
I've always been about choice. You know why? Because growing up in Memphis, Tennessee, in Jim Crow South, my dad said education was the key to my freedom.
So for clarification, you're saying that you support the WeChoose campaign? Is that what you're saying?
These are in line with what we have submitted in part of our ESSA plan, which both of you have read.
So for clarification?
So
for clarification, I mean, I'm asking yes or no. I just have to be sure. I know politicians are very skillful with words, right? And I understand words, but I want to understand yes or no.
Every child must have the opportunity for choice and options. Every child. And I need to say this. More money, programs, and services are not going to change things. In 5 decades, we spent billions of dollars, only to see us get a report on from school to prison pipeline. Oh no, there was a report by the Child Welfare League that said cradle to, how many of you remember the cradle to prison pipeline? All of that says to us, something has to change. And we have to be sure that our children, number one, are validated that they are created equal. They all have the inherent potential to see. They all need choices and opportunities that fit their unique needs. Because just as there are no 2 children alike, there are no 2 districts alike. And the closer we can have impact on decision making here and at the state level, in terms of being sure we have teachers of excellence that tap into all children's aspirations and needs, and that we have a quality system that is accountable to you, the taxpayer, the better off we'll be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I heard a clarification or not. Mr. Williams, if you wouldn't mind tuning in, we'd like to know how you support. I thank Representative Strayhorn for his clarification that that's not within your jurisdiction to make a decision. However, we do understand that the city commission has a bully pulpit and that there is influence from the city commission for you to be able to state representing your constituency because your constituency has brought it to you. And so we'd like to know if you are prepared to support the WeChoose campaign clearly.
Clearly, let me say thank you very much for inviting me. I'm glad I ran into you at the DEA picnic.
Yes.
You invited me to come. This is great. I think I would parrot pretty much everything Mr. Strayhorn said. He really kind of hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned. I am a former school board member like Commissioner Mims. In fact, both of us are the former presidents of the school board. And a lot of the things, in fact, almost verbatim, what you have here in terms of caps on charter schools, our concern about charter schools, we have expressed publicly, privately, in committees. And I want to go back and check. I would want to believe we may have already put some type of either proclamation or something from the city commission on about our desire to see a cap on charter schools. But I told Commissioner Mims we need to go back and check on
Yeah, please do. We'd like to see that.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Thank
But in terms of charter schools, at this point, I'm not here today to beat up charter schools. I will say that I think we went a little wild in Ohio, particularly in Dayton, on charter schools with a lack of accountability. And so in terms of having a cap on them, to me that's common sense at this point. We've had too many. And as was stated, I think State Board Member McGuire claims she has a business background, or so do I. And I'm going to tell you that I work with lots of businesses in almost every industry. What you see is consolidation. You see businesses combining and coming together. Only in schools do we see this fragmentation. So a lot of business people who believe in consolidation, they're pushing fragmentation when it comes to school. I think that is totally duplicitous. And so from my perspective, in terms of breaking down systematically schools, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Do we want to see schools get better? Of course. Do we want to see greater accountability? Of course. Do we want to see the money spent wisely? Of course. Do we want to see teachers better trained? Of course. Do we want to see, at the end of the day, children have a higher achievement? That's the bottom line. But having more charter schools, to me, is not the answer. And having those that we have, making sure they're accountable and equal footing with public schools, is part of the solution. It's not the total solution, it's part of the solution. In my mind, I would rather see us invest more in traditional public education, in my true opinion. But anyway, I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to speak and share our thoughts.
Did we sign up? Did we have a yes?
I thought I said like.
I want to make sure.
I thought I was just saying yes, yes, yes.
Okay. Yes. We got to hear that yes.
Oh, I thought that was really clear. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
And I'll definitely follow up about that proclamation that might have been put together. We'll definitely follow up with you. And correct me if I'm wrong, your son watched him play ball, if it wasn't last year, ugly jump shot that just kept going in. Ugly jump shot that kept going in. Stivers student, so a strong Dayton Public School supporter. Mr. Mims? Yes, sir.
I thought I'd walk on up since I was the only one left. Real quickly, former DPS student, former teacher, former coach, former union president, former board president, director of legislative affairs for the last 25 years at DPS before I retired. Also state school board when I was the only African American member of the state school board elected in 4 counties. Just want to give that background, just so you understand where we come from. And both my children graduated from Dayton Public Schools, and I consider them doing great because they don't ask me for money anymore. Both make more money than me. All of this is by design. You talked about all the symptoms and all the actions and things that people have done. All of this is by design. I don't know if you looked up or can remember in 1983 a Nation at Risk report by the RAND Corporation that was done. That particular report was done to make it open season to demonize public schools. There have been major pushes to try to get more and more vouchers into public education. And the general public across the nation was not buying it. So they came up with a vehicle that was a bridge between public and vouchers called charter schools. And in 1997, after the first Supreme Court decision, which was a little more than 20 years ago, March 24th of 1997, the first of 4 decisions, when the court said that the way we fund schools in Ohio is unconstitutional. So as a public backlash, and that was a decision that was made by 4 Supreme Court justices against 3. 2 Republican Supreme Court justices and 2 Democrat Supreme Court justices made that decision. And legislators began to turn almost on each other, trying to fight that particular response. The judges told the governor and the legislatures to fix school funding. For 2 years, they talked about the Supreme Court justices and their ancestors in very unkind ways, because they did not want to fix school funding. A backlash was in 1997 when a bill that was already on the books for increasing the number of credits required for graduation from 18 to 21, Senate Bill 55. In that particular bill, they came up with a charter school mechanism only for the Big 8 urban city school districts. Now, at the same time, they passed another bill, which at that time was House Bill 412, which called for an audit of only the 21 urban city school districts. And they developed a template. So no matter what you were doing, that template would suggest that you were not spending your money properly, that you were not doing X, you were not doing Y, you were not doing Z. Therefore, we got Senate Bill 55, which says, let's send the kids to charter schools. They did a report card that was normed for 2000, but they gave it in 1999, which purposely showed a contrast in African-American students in urban schools not doing well, which then justified more support for charter schools. All of this is by design. Just give you just a little bit of history. So the issue was then to make sure that they fragmentized, because when they gave the reports of the 412 audits that were done by bean counters in all the school systems, not looking at quality and what children needed, just how can you be more accountable. They went to each school district in each community and they demonized the school district and the superintendent in those places. There was an urban congress that was made up of 11 members on the executive board and members of 70 members who represent all 21 urban city school districts. The governor disbanded that particular committee because prior to that, the urban schools had gotten a 12% increase from the state legislature to fix the problems that was documented in an item called Through the Eyes of Children that was done for 3 years with representatives from the 21 urban city school districts, because the school districts were beginning to improve, which they didn't really want them to improve. Now, so we go back to this continued push on charter schools. And everything you said about them is true. Lack of accountability, but that is by design. We had 412 school districts in Ohio. When you add, as Commissioner Williams mentioned, when you add an additional 400 charter schools, you still have the same 1.8 million children in Ohio. And you have an unconstitutional system of funding education. So now you have fragmented the process even further. You've added an additional 1/3 of public schools, added additional teachers, added additional administrators, so you've exacerbated a system that you've already said is unconstitutional. Now, quickly, in summation, the issue of pushing for the moratorium, I did that a long time ago, okay? Long time ago. I'm on record at the state board for pushing that. And what I said